Thanks so much to the organizer. It's a great honor for me to be here. This is an amazing community, and I'm very happy to share our work on how sound can improve the overall virtual reality experience. So I work on sound because as a child, I was forced to play the violin. And I was a very bad violinist. I was almost always much more interested on the technology and the mathematics. So this is why my dream was to break the violin through technology. So my PhD actually was not about virtual reality, unlike many of you. I was working on what is called the sound of friction. So at Stanford University, there is a wonderful place called Center for Computer Research in Music and Acoustics, where composers and technologists, they work together to create a new generation of music technology. And there I was working on looking how you can reproduce the sound of the violin or other instruments driven by what is called friction. So it's not until 2003 that I moved to Denmark. So Denmark is a small country, and the main campus for us is here in Aalborg. We are based in a capital city in Copenhagen, but back in 2003, Aalborg had a very nice virtual reality center that now doesn't really exist anymore. So they had a six-sided cave, and they had a panorama display and so on. So that's how we got started with virtual reality, specifically with a project called Benogo. So Benogo stands for being there without going. It was a project from a European initiative called Future of Emerging Technologies, and the idea was to create stereoscopic image-based rendering in order to cope with the limitations of the 3D graphics that all of you know very well, but at the same time trying to make these spaces more lively and not completely interactively, but you could visit virtual spaces reconstructed to pictures. But the space is very dead without the sound. So our role in the project was specifically to create interactive soundscapes. So we were building these very nice sandals with sensors that you walk around the virtual space and you listen to the sounds of your footsteps. You listen, in this case, is the Botanical Garden of Prague. So you listen to the sound of Prague. And through that, we made some studies that show that people were actually more motivated to explore the space when interactive sound was added. And that led to another project called Natural Interactive Walking, where also Anatol was a partner. It was an European project that was looking at how can we recreate the sound and also the haptic sensation of walking in spaces. So walking in a laboratory, but feeling like you are in a beach, in a mountain, in a street, and so on. So the sound and the haptic sensation of walking. And another study that was done, actually, those of you who had the luck to visit the laboratory in Rennes, you might have noticed this four-sided cave. So the idea of these studies was to keep sense of presence. This was done also with Anatol and Ferran. And the idea was to make people not look at the side of the cave where there is not a screen. So when the people were looking in the, let's say, wrong side, we were triggering some sounds so they could turn to the desired space. And this idea of using sound to trigger attention was not new, and also actually Tabitha had some nice suggestions in her PhD on redirected walking on how also sound could be used to redirect. There is still some research that can be done in that area. And last, we have been organizing at IEEE VR 8th edition of what we call the Sonic Interactions in Virtual Environments workshop. And last Sunday, we had the best turnout. There was around 100 people, and very nice keynote by Tiffany Bouchard on inclusive sonic interaction. And if you want to read more about both technical and creative aspects of sonic interaction, we have this open access book that you can have a look at. But nowadays, in Copenhagen, we have this multisensory experience lab, and we call it like this because we are very interested in understanding how the different senses interact, and also how can we use technology to help individuals that have limited sensory capabilities, for example, limited vision or limited audition, limited mobility, or also limited mental capabilities. And nowadays, as you know, we don't need to stay in the lab. We are very, very interested in taking technologies outside laboratories. So to give them at home, so individuals can use them at all, use them in schools, use them in hospitals, retirement homes, or museums. And so this, of course, presents different challenges and also different opportunities. I will start by telling you what are the technological challenges from the point of view of audio. And then I will show you how we use these technologies to help different kinds of populations. So from the technological challenges, some years ago, we wrote this article that shows what are the technologies that are needed to create a compelling, interactive sonic environment. So to go a little bit more in details, so we have the person who, so we are interested in interactive sound. So there's always some person making an action. The action propagates in the space. The acoustics of this room is not the same as the acoustics of the bathroom. And also the sound will be received by a listener. What does it mean? So we will start with what is called HRTF, which for those of you who are not audio inclined stands for head-related transfer function. This basically represents the fact that each of us has a different ear, a different body, a different head. When you receive a sound, before it reaches your brain, it will pass through your ears and it will reflect through your body. So transfer function is basically the filter. And how do you collect those? Those transfer functions are actually those that allow you to perceive sound in 3D. So how do we do it if we want to do it, for example, in virtual reality? There are different technologies that also have advantages and limitations. So the main technology, or the most popular, is what is called a head and torso simulator, or a dummy head. So this is the one that we have in our laboratory. We received it actually, our laboratory, we moved there in 2012 when Nokia, some of you might have heard of the company Nokia. They used to make nice cell phone, but then they closed. Too bad for them, but good for us because we inherited their laboratory and also some nice equipment like this that I don't think we would buy. It is a bit too expensive. But what is nice about this, it has 2 ears. Each ear has a microphone, and you use it to record sound in what is called an anechoic room, like this one, so a room that doesn't have any reflection. So what does it mean to record with this? Then the recordings you play to your ears, and then you should hear the sound in space. So if you record the sound coming from, let's say, this direction, then when you play, you will hear it. You play through headphones, and you will hear it as coming from that direction. But does it work? Well, in our lab, we have a researcher called Jesper, who works at the Music Conservatory. Then we have another engineer called Jesper, who works with 3D sound. And then another engineer called Jesper, who works with machine learning. So for those Jesper, probably the simulation works because their head is very similar to the, sorry Jesper. But in reality, we are all different, right? We are all different shapes, different sizes, and different bodies. Also, we have very different ears. So a couple of years ago, a researcher called Simone Spagnol investigated how having personalized 3D sound helps in creating this sense of immersiveness and better localization. So again, he used this torso. This is another brand, but as you can see, it looks very similar to the other one. And this one, also you can change the ears. So he 3D printed the ears of different people, and he called it Viking dataset because those people were all from North, mostly from Iceland. And in a shooting game, because that's the one that usually requires more timing and precision, we showed that was just a PC game. We showed that actually having this individual, so basically the subjects playing the games through machine learning had their ears matched as close as possible to this database. And the database is publicly available. So what it was actually shown is that with the personalized ears, we are better and faster to shoot. But nowadays, actually, you can get your personalized ear also if you have a latest generation of AirPods. You can take a picture of your ear and get your personalization. Or a couple of years ago, Meta Reality Lab had a conference in Redmond in their headquarters, and they have this room where they recorded those that were interested. They recorded also the personalized ear. So this, as you can see, requires a very complicated setup. So you need a specific room, and you need this robot that turns around and does 360 recordings. So the database is available, should be anonymized, but as you could see, I'm one of the subjects, and I think I'm the only one who is woman above 40. So, but, what does it mean in terms of using these simulations in interactive environments? So we want to have a trade-off between complexity and also accuracy of the auditory representation. So the most complex is obviously the one where you need the specialized room and your dedicated recordings. In between, we have getting your HRTF from a database. And this one, what is called the generic, is the one who has the lowest accuracy and also the lowest complexity. So obviously, the goal would be to have lowest complexity and higher accuracy. But do we need all this? Do we need to go to Meta and get our own sounds in order to have a good experience? Well, so do we need this personalization? There are many studies that show that in VR we actually don't. Because our brain is plastic and it adapts to stimuli through training. So we know that the visual modality has a much higher spatial resolution than the auditory modality. So even if there is a discrepancy between a visual and auditory object, the visual will capture the auditory. So we don't really need, in interactive virtual reality environments, we don't really need to have a very precise 3D sound rendering, which is good for time and also for computation. And there might be some scenarios, so it really depends. There might be some scenarios where it's needed, for example, if you have limited vision or if you're not moving much. So there are studies that show that this personalization is important. But in interactive virtual environments, especially when delivered through the horrible loudspeaker of the portable devices, you really don't need that. Also, another important aspect is that our ears are not the same. So you might record it today, and the day after, your ears change. Well, I mean, not day by day, but progressively, your ears change. And also your hearing capabilities change. All of us will get some sort of hearing loss. So just you have to take it. So this is for where the sound is. And then the important element is also the room, right? So the sound propagation and reverberation. This is a huge field of research in my community, especially the sound and music computing community. So like more than 10 years ago, some very good signal processing researchers, they wrote a paper called 50 Years of Artificial Reverberation, and then they wrote another one, more than 50 years of artificial reverberation. So this is really a huge field of research. But again, for interactive virtual reality with delivered through this pretty low fidelity headset, having what is called a shoebox model is probably enough. What is a shoebox model? It means that you just look at the dimension of the room and you calculate X, Y, Z axis, and with that you create a model of the sound. This is not, of course, good for architectural acoustics, where you really want to be precise, knowing if you put, especially for concert halls. But for other applications, like many of those that we see at this conference, a shoebox model is fine. What is very important is what is called audiovisual plausibility. So you cannot see a cathedral and hear the sound of a bathroom. There has to be some sort of a matching between what you hear and what you see. But what are the limits? That is really not completely understood yet. We talk about sonic interactions, so where is the interaction? Nowadays, again, we use commercial controllers that are very symmetric or hand tracking, where of course we lack the haptic feedback. So can we do better with the interaction? You might know, of course, Jean Lanier, who is also said to have invented the term virtual reality. So what he says is that musical instruments are the best user interface. What does that mean? That with musical instruments, we can have hands doing different actions, like, for example, the bow of the violin. We can blow on them. We can do so many things. And maybe we can be inspired by musical instruments to design novel controllers for virtual reality. And this might be the case. Some years ago, so actually exactly 10 years ago, VR was running also in France, but in the south, in Ars, and there was the 3D UI competition that still exists. At the time, the theme was about musical instruments, 3D musical instruments. So we participated to the competition, and I'm going to show you our submission. It's a little bit embarrassing. So the theme was create a 3D musical instrument and then play the song Frère Jacques, you know, like the na 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 na. That. So let me show you our submission. Please, well, you can judge. I guess you got the point. So everybody else showed up, of course, with head-mounted displays and very sophisticated VR equipment. We didn't even have a VR. We just came with this box. And some of my colleagues, they were like, please, let's pretend that our demo broke. It's too embarrassing to show up with this. But actually, what happens, we actually won. And I think the reason why we won is the novelty of the interaction, which, yeah, I don't see any other reason, honestly. But so this made us think about how do we interact with sound. And this study was the first one where we were actually looking at augmented hearing and how to interact. So the idea was, can we use virtual reality to prototype novel interactions, for example, for hearing aids, using eye tracking or using different kind of gestures. But speaking about hearing aids or hearing, do you know how your hearing is tested? How many of you have had a hearing test in the last 6 months? Not many. In the last year? Yes, not many. You should check your ears, it's very important. So, and do you know, since many of you didn't do it, so what you do when you test your ear, you are in a booth and you hear these audible sounds. Yeah, oh my God, yes. And then what basically, you're in the booth, you need to click when you hear the sound, and it goes lower and lower in amplitude, and then it gives you these curves. So these curves, basically what they show, that here, this person needs a sound at 70 decibel in order to hear a specific frequency. So these are the frequencies, and this is the amplitude, but then this person actually got much better. Then she needs only, I say she because this was me, and this shows how in a couple of months actually hearing can change. And the doctor could not tell me why. I could not hear anything here. But these tests are very unecological. So virtual reality has been used also to increase, or is starting to be used to increase ecological validity when testing hearing. So there is the need to have better techniques to test hearing. And if your hearing is really, really bad, then you need what is called a cochlear implant. So I'm going to tell you, so a cochlear implant, basically, if you don't know, directly stimulates the nerve, bypass the whole ear. And I would like to play you a song, and can you tell me if you recognize which song this is? Does anybody recognize it? I see a hand up there. I'm going to play the original song. Let's see if you recognize it.
I want to talk to you.
The last time we talked, Mr. Smith, you reduced me to tears. I promise you.
No.
Do I attract you? Do I repulse you with my queasy smile? Am I too dirty? Am I too flirty?
Does anybody recognize the song?
I could be wholesome, I could be loathsome.
It goes on
just
for a while.
little bit shy.
And then it's like, no, no, no. So this is to say that if you have a cochlear implant, those they are mostly tuned to recognize speech, but not music. So the first sound that you heard is actually the same song, but passed through a 16-channel cochlear implant simulator, where placed between 450 hertz and 7,000 hertz. So this is how you would hear if you lose a complete capability in your ears and you get the cochlear implant. It's not true, you don't hear like this, and we're going to see why. So, yeah, the song is called Grayscale. So, our first study using VR in hearing was to look at, so we know very well that VR can be used as an empathy machine. So we wanted to create a simulation of what it is to be a child with either a cochlear implant or an hearing aid. You can have a combination of both depending on your skill in each ear. So you could have damage in one ear or in both, or maybe you need in one ear one hearing aid and a cochlear implant. So we created this simulation that I'm going to show you now.
Welcome to the virtual school of Aalborg University. Do you know someone with hearing loss or someone who has a cochlear implant? Would you like to hear what such an implant sounds like? Here at the school, you can walk around freely and experience the environment with cochlear implants in virtual reality. In this video, we will try to demonstrate this experience. Let's do a test.
So in the test, you walk around and you listen to different sounds with different hearing skills. And in the test, we see that, as expected, those that have normal hearing are much better at localizing where a sound is and recognizing what the person was saying. But what was more interesting was, so we tried this simulation with 15 parents of children with limited hearing, and some of the parents, they said that that really gave them an understanding of the challenge that their child was having. But at the same time, we collaborated with audiology and speech and language pathologists that they hated this project. They say it's really bad to show to parents. So parents are already very challenged with the children in everyday life. It's really bad to show them also how bad the child is doing. And also because, again, our brain is plastic. So the simulators, they don't really give a good impression of reality. They are just a simulator. But then our brain will adapt, and actually the children, they do much better than what the pure technology would say. So the simulators don't show what the brain is doing to the input sound. So they said that maybe this could be used by the teachers, so the teachers have better awareness that the children might have troubles. But using it with the parents, and we didn't think about the fact that VR as empathy machine is not good for everybody. It depends on the target. But what was good was to train what is called spatial awareness. So children in Denmark and teenagers, they're doing very well even if they are born with a hearing deficit because they get treated very early. However, they still have challenges in a crowded environment. So if they're sitting like now, listening just to one person, they're fine. But as soon as they go to a classroom or to the playground or when they go to a museum, that becomes really challenging for them. So we participated together with the Copenhagen Hearing and Balance Center. So this is a center which is part of the main hospital in Copenhagen, Rigshospitalet. And now we are actually very lucky to have an office there. So we can really test the technologies and develop especially the technologies together with the patients and the therapists. So the goal of this project was to train spatial awareness. So spatial awareness is, where is the sound coming from, who is speaking, what are they saying? So we created a VR experience that the children had to use for 2 months at home, and then we wanted to see if their spatial awareness in periods was improved. So their main challenge, again, is sound localization. So in this experience, also talking to them, as I said, they didn't have problems in classroom. They had problems in the playground, and they had problems when they visited museum. So we created a simulation of the Danish Music Museum, which is a very nice place with a lot of musical instruments. Of course, you cannot touch and play them, but in VR, we can make them make sound and play. So the child had to go around the museum and recognize different musical instruments. And the playground, there was like a sort of sonic treasure hunt. So then the children go play at home, they get different trophies. And I show you a little video of how this, we're not very good in graphics. So we actually learned a lot from this project, and I'm going to tell you what we learned. So we managed to enroll 22 children, and they had different kinds of hearing abilities. And the children were given the simulation, the game at home, and they had to train for 2 months, and then after a couple of weeks, they were coming to the hospital and having focus group with the speech and language pathologists, not with the developers. And so the good thing is that they get better while they play the games. But that is not what we learned. What we learned is, first of all, our games, after 3 weeks, they became super boring. And so the children, they didn't need so much training. And actually, even if they said that they liked it, nobody managed to finish the games. So even if they said they were tedious, they didn't finish it. And this, of course, because these teens, they used to play games that are developed by very skilled and well-supported companies, not like our little lab. But one nice thing, actually, that we learned is that at the end of the project, we took all the children to the Music Museum, and so many recognizes the spaces that they saw in virtual reality. So, and also, another nice thing is that one child said, oh, now I know what I have to do when I go play soccer, where to place myself so I can listen to the coach. So there was a transfer of skills from the virtual world to the physical world, which seems very beneficial. So what we can improve is I don't think we can make more fun games, so maybe reduce the training and maybe make more different activities, and then this training would work. But one issue is, we were talking about precision of the specialized sound, right? So there was an engineer that was involved in this project who was telling us, oh, you need to simulate each single device of each single child, the acoustics of each room. So this would have taken, we would still be doing it now. This would take ages and ages. And in this case, it was not about acoustic precision. It was about awareness. So the child was not having, and also everybody was using, as you can see, the head-mounted display with the horrible loudspeaker embedded, but still, they had some spatial awareness. They didn't learn precisely to localize, but they learned that it's a challenge if lots of people are talking, that there are some locations that are better than others. So it was it was not an acoustics simulation. It was a learning experience on spatial awareness. So if we wanted to simulate a single device, it would have been very complex and very accurate, but very complex. So what we want, again, is having low complexity, but high accuracy. And we were instead, I think, low complexity and low accuracy, but the low accuracy was fine. For this project, it was. For another project that I'm going to show you, it was not. So how much can we tolerate of this discrepancy? So we had another project where also Scott sitting here was the main developer. So in this project, we were also using visual to train auditory accuracy. In this case, we didn't want to use virtual reality because by talking to, this was targeted not to children, but to elderly population. They didn't like to be completely immersed in the virtual environment. They like to be able also to see the real world. So at the time, 3 years ago, we had the HoloLens available. So in this project, what was happening is that there is the therapist who has a tablet and moves around the sound in space, and then the person who is experiencing sees the objects, so they sees the musicians moving and learn about which musician makes which sound. I can show you a little video. So the person looks around and then learns that on the left we have a keyboard, and then they can play also the keyboard alone, because one of the challenges that they have is when there is a band, everything gets very mixed. So they need to learn, oh, this is what it is, this is the other instrument, and so on. But in this case, actually, there was too much disparity. The HoloLens was giving us so many calibration issues for the spatial audio that sometimes the keyboard was on the left and the sound was, so the image of the keyboard was on the left and the sound on the right. So that really, you can tolerate some discrepancy, but not as much, because in that case, then the training became just confusing. So, do you know that March 3rd was World Hearing Day? Did you know that? No? So, what is World Hearing Day? World Hearing Day is a day that is organized by the World Health Organization. And the theme of this year was a changing mindset and empower yourself. So it is actually a pretty big event. There were 613 registered. You can register your event online. And we were the only one in Denmark. So also in Denmark, even if there are the 3 biggest hearing aids companies, there was not much happening with World Hearing Days. And so we have been developing for some years an application called eAenormous. So what is eAenormous? It is about you enter your ear, you learn about the ear, and you also learn what it happens to you if you don't protect your ears. So I'm going to show you a video. Maybe I turn down the sound because it's not very nice. So here you say, it says, it's not, but that's okay. So basically you enter and there is this character that teaches you about the outer ear, and then it tells you that if the sound is too loud, you need to wear earplugs, and then you have to remove the earwax. Soon you will have to remove the earwax, and then it explains you the tympani that you need to protect it, because if you break that, then you cannot hear anymore. And then also it teaches you about tinnitus. So what is tinnitus? How do you get tinnitus? And also it tells you that if you are not careful, your ear cell will completely degenerate and disappear. And those, they cannot come back. Well, now Stanford is actually working on research to recreate the ear cells. But so far, if you destroy your ear cells, you cannot hear anymore. So you will have to get a hearing aid or something like that. So this application was tested during World Hearing Day, both in our campus, and 2 purposes: learning about the ear, so for schools, and also creating better awareness of how to protect your ears. It was also tested in Geneva, where the World Health Organization has this innovation lab. And it's actually very nice that nowadays we could just send them the APK and then they could download it and use it without much trouble. So nowadays these shared VR experiences can be very easily shared. We still need to hear. It seems like they used it. It's a few days ago that this event happened. So we have to meet with them next week to get more detailed feedback. But it's very, very nice to collaborate with clinicians and end users to get feedback, not just inside our lab as those that have created the technology. So this brings me to what did we learn by creating these technologies? So we are working with all different populations, and our solutions, they really don't work for everybody. We need to start using more personalized solutions, maybe also with, of course, AI, like everybody else, because different children have different tastes. Adults like different music. Some people enjoy VR training, some don't. So it is really, we cannot create the same solution, the same training, the same experience for everybody. We really need to be better at personalizing. Also, there is an issue of hygiene, and maybe some of you were at Emil's presentation. So we are sharing these devices in the hospital, and if you read the paper, you will see that hygiene has not really been taken in enough consideration as it should. Also, it's very, very important to co-design from the very beginning with the end user and everybody around them, the parents, the caregiver, the hospital. And we have really a challenge to run a study with a diverse population. It's much easier to run studies in the lab with our students where you can get lots of test subjects, but of course they are not diverse and they are not really giving a good representation of the population. On the other hand, if you work with the children or also with adults, there is an issue of fatigue. Also, these children are very busy, and the parents also. So the tests that we are designing, they should benefit them. We shouldn't have the researcher ego to put them through hours of testing with a lot of time just because we want our good statistical value. We really need to be more understanding that we are designing for them and not for us. Of course, there is also the issue of cyber sickness, especially with a population that is not used to VR, that is more, they are more prone to cyber sickness. And actually now we are working with the hospital to better understand the relationship between motion sickness, both in the real and in the virtual world. Because nowadays also, well, many get sick in car, myself, but also nowadays when you use like mobile devices in the car, you get even more sick. So it's not completely understood, as you know very well, because there are many workshops and sessions here on cyber sickness. Another interesting thing is that our sense of hearing is very well connected to our sense of balance. So if we have a hearing deficit, or all of us should train balance, because that is also something that degenerates. So now we are working with a physiotherapist in the same hospital to create a gamified solution to train balance. And this was also presented in one of the workshops. And this is also another situation where personalization is very important, because some of the elderly, they really enjoy the game. Some, they got sick as soon as they put in the head-mounted display. And of course, we all have different needs in terms of balance and how to train our balance skills. And also, we are talking about a lot about hearing and vision, but also touch is very important. So we are working with touch and sound are very tightly connected. So we are working on devices to stimulate hearing through haptic feedback. So for example, here you see a device that you feel haptic through the feet. We had it in different concerts. And here is for kids like a teddy bear that you feel the music. And also this, sometimes the worst, I mean, this girl destroyed after 2 minutes. She was very aggressive. But so it is not something that a solution fit it all. So that is our biggest learning experience, actually, that we should almost design one device for each person. And of course, we don't have the resources to do that. So having said that, I think I can close. So thank you very much.